This is Peggy Smedley, the Editorial Director of Connected World and the host of the Peggy Smedley Show. And today I'm with Steve Subar, the President and CEO of TempoIQ. Steve, welcome.
Thank you, Peggy.
So now, Steve, we could talk about TempoIQ, and I want to do that in a second. But first, I really want you to tell me, where is all of this headed, this whole thing, the Internet of Things today? What do you think?
Well, I'd say that to some extent there's truth to the hype cycle, but there's no doubt that this will be a very, very, very big business soon. What's interesting to me is that over the course of 31 years, I've seen and experienced a lot of different new technologies, and there are some interesting anomalies in the IoT space. I can tell you that in almost every single customer meeting that I've attended over the course of the last year, there's hardly been a representative from IT. And so I ask myself, well, why would that be? Why isn't IT at the table? And to a large extent, it says something about the stage we're at in the evolution of this marketplace. And when I think about that, I say to myself, gee, I sure wouldn't want to have been the CEO of Honeywell to wake up the next morning to hear about this new company called Nest. And so to a large extent, I think that's what's happening in the IoT space today. The C-suite is anointing someone called maybe the IoT czar. Very often they're a senior executive in a line of business. They might be in a strategy group, or we even meet people who are in charge of IoT coming out of innovation labs. Oftentimes it's a much competed position. It's not just good to have on your LinkedIn profile and your resume, but it's an opportunity to really own something that can dramatically change the course of a business, and who wouldn't want to be in charge of something like that? So when these people come to us, there are some interesting dimensions to the way that they approach the problem. Almost always they're out of time. Incidentally, there's probably a lot in the name of a company. We happen to be called TempoIQ. Tempo talks about time, so we're the company that people come to when time matters most. But what they really want to focus on is, how do we get an IoT application up now? Not a science project, not a lab project, but how do we build something that we can show to our internal customers, to senior management, to the board of directors, that we're making important moves in this direction. And sometimes as well, they want to stand up that first application and be able to put it in the marketplace, turn it over to a customer.
Tell us how you differentiate, because that's why I wanted you to start telling us where you think things are. How do you differentiate TempoIQ from all the other players that say they are serving the Internet of Things marketplace today?
I referred to it earlier, which has to do with a sense of urgency of getting something done now. So we're a young, innovative company, and we like to build software, but we like to build software in innovative ways. That's part how we attract and retain great talent. So we have an agile methodology, nothing new there, but a lot of our customers are big companies. I'm thinking about one who's a new customer, $22 billion multinational manufacturer of industrial drives. And these big companies have lots of resources, but what they're challenged with oftentimes is the ability to innovate. They come to companies like ours who are much smaller, who may not have as many resources, but are very innovative. So we've applied an agile methodology to IoT applications. So one of the things we offer these customers is something we call a test drive, which is a series of 4 one-week sprints, after which we've not only connected the devices, we've not only secured the devices, we've not only ingested all of that content, stored it in ways that are bespoke to IoT time series data, but we've built initially some computational analytics, created real-time streaming, and provided visualization capability. So essentially after a month, they've got their first minimal viable product up and running. I'm not aware of anybody else who's taken that approach to date in the marketplace.
So Steve, looking at this right now, how do you see what TempoIQ is doing with what the City of Chicago is doing, what you're doing here with ITA? How do you put it all together?
Well, so I've talked, Peggy, a lot about why I think things are different. I'm going to answer your question in a little different way and really tell you about why all those examples you gave are probably the same things that have happened over the last 30 plus years. So when I talk about IoT applications or IoT enterprise applications, the way we think of the business, the way we think of how this market is evolving, is just take IoT out of the equation. And what do you have left? What you have left is an enterprise application software business. And a lot's been learned over the last 30 years about how enterprises want to think about enterprise application software. If you go back 30 years ago, there were legions of COBOL programmers at the City of Chicago and systems programmers who wrote the JCL, and they just did it the old-fashioned way. And then a little later, starting in the 90s, there were tools that made those programmers better, and the City of Chicago lost to that software. I sold a bunch to them. And then later there were tools that generated the third generation languages, those were fourth generation languages. And eventually there were companies that came out and said, you know what, really what you wanted to consume was an application, isn't it? So here's an application that's built for you for running various different city functions. And today, of course, companies like Oracle and SAP and Salesforce and others have put those in the cloud to make them much easier to install, much easier to turn up, and much easier to consume. So I think of what's happening right now with dozens and many different kinds of companies in different industries is very much that. Enterprises want the applications. They actually don't want tools and they don't want legions of consultants. They're trying to figure out how do we get those applications up and running. Unfortunately, there aren't a lot of those off the shelf yet. So there are companies, I think, who are positioning to build those by creating vertical expertise that eventually will have, let's say, the next SAP for IoT.
Well, it's interesting. Well, we thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Peggy. Glad to be here.